Brad, the thing about Auburn baseball right now
Yeah.
is they are ranked really well, but we don't actually know where they are because baseball has so many different polls and so many different orders of where everybody is, right?
Yeah.
D1 baseball, Auburn jumped 9 spots. They're like number 11. But Baseball America has them somewhere different. Perfect Game has them somewhere different. The coaches poll has them someone different. But I think the big takeaway we can make is as long as you keep winning series like you did this last weekend,
Yeah.
you're just going to keep climbing and keep climbing. At the end of the day, all that really matters is that you're one of those top 16 teams and you get to host a regional in Plainsman Park because that gives you a great chance to make it back to Omaha. This is the Barn Baseball Show. Lindsey Crosby, Brad Law. Sonny DeShera has not quit on us. He is playing minor league games. He will be back soon. We miss you, Sonny. Hopefully you get wrapped up and get into your season soon.
Yeah.
But Brad, what a great weekend for Auburn in Kentucky. You go 2-1 for baseball. Obviously, you go 2-0 for basketball. And from the broadcast, both watching on TV and listening to your radio calls, it sounded like you guys had a lot of Auburn fans in the house for the whole series.
Especially Saturday. The weather kept some people away in general Friday, kept Kentucky people away because their basketball team was playing at the same time as the game. So, they weren't gonna come out to baseball when they could watch their basketball team on TV. And then just the weather kept a few people. But now Saturday was really nice. It was sunny, windy, chilly, but not uncomfortable. And it was a lot of orange in the stands. And it was enough that, I think the cheerleaders pep band came out to the game as well Saturday. It was enough that the coaches and players noticed. They really noticed more than lip service, more than just kind of a cursory, oh, it was nice they were here. They noticed it and they appreciated it. And there were a couple times where like a home run celebration from Ike Irish sounded like Plainsman Park because of the number of Auburn fans that were there.
That's always you don't always get to see that on the road, and the way it worked out well with baseball and basketball makes it do good. That could happen this weekend as well. You're playing basketballs in Atlanta, baseball's in Athens. That's not a terribly long drive, and so you play on Friday. I think if Auburn wins basketball on Friday, they'd play again on Sunday. There's a Saturday game at 3:00 in Athens. You can drive
3 Central.
Yeah, 3 Central. You can drive over, watch that, and go back and catch some basketball on Sunday. So let's get into that weekend because 8-7 victories on both Friday and Saturday. You get shut down 6-0 on Sunday in a game that was moved for weather. Started off really rough for Auburn, but Friday. My big takeaway from that game, and I want to hear yours because it's probably a little bit different, was Sam Dutton. It wasn't the best start of his career, but you absolutely were still in that game when he left. And that's not necessarily something you've been able to count on in previous seasons, is being in the game after that starter went 5 and came out.
Yeah. He gave up 8 hits in 5 innings, but he only gave up 4 runs. He didn't walk anybody. I don't think Auburn pitching Friday walked a batter. I'd have to go back and look at the box from the Friday game, but you play to that ballpark with a turf field and the way Kentucky plays, they hit line drives and ground balls. They're engineered that way. They're not a power hitting team. So they're going to get hits. And Sam did a really good job of managing trouble when he ran into it. He didn't give up a ton of free bases. And as a result, you're in a place to win. That's what you ask him for in all these games. You want to be in a position to win when your starter goes out. And if he can give you 5 innings, great. If you got 5 innings from your starter every time out, or 80% of the time, you would take it and be very glad that you were at that point. So, I thought it doesn't have to be 7 innings of 2-run, 2-hit baseball in order to be an effective start. He left the team in really good shape when he came out.
We would take that. Don't get us wrong. If Auburn wanted to find that first round pick who was going to give us 10 punchies in 7 innings, we'd take it. But to your point, Auburn didn't walk anybody. After Kentucky's starter left the game, Kentucky didn't walk anybody. 3 total walks in the entire game for both teams. And there was a little bit of, you kind of had one of those bullpen issues that you see from time to time. Jet Johnston really kind of struggled, gave up a couple runs there in the 6th to open the 6th inning.
Yep.
And John Armstrong got tagged for one later. Kind of a messy situation. 3 hits against him, not something you see every day. But other than that,
I'll say this though about John. If you look, this is one of those instances where the stat line is deceiving. The coaches were perfectly fine with what John did on the mound. The hits, one was down the line, another was a high chopper. There was he pitched where he needed to pitch.
Yeah, he did his job.
He did his job. He gave up. You're like, oh, but he gave up 3 hits. Yeah, but there's context. There's always a little nuance that goes with it. And this is one of those, he didn't just get lit up for 3 hits. He gave up 3 Kentucky Proud Park hits. And that's different than in some other place, than on most other places in the league. They're hits at Kentucky and Vanderbilt. I don't know how many other places that those are hits.
Yeah. And then you see Parker Carlson come in. He got the win. Parker Carlson gets 2 wins on the weekend. This is the John Armstrong vulture thing that used to happen, where Armstrong would vulture wins from everybody else. And then Ryan Hetzler gets the save. This, to me, you went on a Friday night. Nobody on offense was really dominating, right? I think Chase Fralick had 2 hits, but everybody else, it was Eric Snow with a timely hit here that drove in 2. Lucas Steele 1 for 3, but he drove in 2. It was very much a team effort. Nobody took control of the game. Nobody kind of dominated offensively.
Yeah.
You did that Auburn thing where you picked up a run in the 1st, a run in the 2nd, a run in the 3rd, 3 here, 2 there. And before you know it, you get the win, especially with that clutch 9th inning. I think that was Chase Fralick's double. And then Ike Irish, when you see somebody drop an easy pop-up, you always think it's the Plainsman Park lights. That was a thing for the longest time when the ball goes over the light level. And in the ballpark, was there anything that kind of made you think that was going to happen? I know the wind was a factor all weekend, but
but they know the wind. They're
used to it.
No. And I'll be honest, I was underneath. I was in a tunnel underneath, prepared to go out onto the field for postgame when the play happened. I didn't actually see the play. I just listened to Andy call it, and I heard the people monitoring the Kentucky video operation groan when it happened. No, there was nothing about it. That was it. It's the most, and I feel
feel bad for the kid
a little bit. Like if you take the Auburn, Kentucky, the competitiveness away, you feel bad because it's as basic an error as you would ever see. There is no possible world where you think that that's going to happen. And Cole Edwards running full speed because there's 2 outs. There's 2 outs. So he scores from second on an infield pop-up.
And that ends up being the winning run. It's just
the difference in the game.
Difference in the game. And that's one of those, you never quit, right? You never take anything for granted. You play it all out. That's what Auburn does.
And that's what I think you chalk up both wins in the series to. It's not because they hit especially well. It's not because they pitched especially well. Like you can't say consistent hitting, consistent pitching. Auburn hit 225 for the series. Okay. I think that's the number. 224. Okay. Ike Irish was 7 for 14. If you take away his at-bats, Auburn hit 183 for the weekend.
And you won 2 out of 3.
And won 2 out of 3 games because they just refuse to quit. They do not give anything away. Bases loaded, 1 out, 10th inning. We're going to put 5 infielders in the game and have 2 outfielders and 5 infielders because we're not giving away anything.
Ike Irish, multiple home runs late in game 2. Like that's the story of game 2, to your point, not generational, career game for Ike Irish, 5 for 6, 2 homers, 3 runs, only 2 RBI because both home runs were hit with the bases empty. But just something where Auburn does the Auburn thing in a game where it felt like they had that won 2 or 3 times in the 9th inning. Bub Terrell makes a diving catch and left with 2 outs.
Yeah.
And on review, which we can all clearly see at home, you're on the radio call like this is clear as day. He caught it. They say no catch. You had a couple strike calls not given there in the 9th. Kentucky ties it up. And then what happens in the 11th? Ike Irish hits second homer of the game. You take a lead. That's the 8-7 victory. Same situation. They just they always battled back and never really gave up. And other than a big 6th inning, it was just nickel and diamond here and there consistently to get you there.
How big were Ike's 2 home runs? Well, the first one in the 9th made it a 4-run game. Without it, Kentucky walks it off in the 9th because they got 4 in the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
So all they did was tie it. Massive home run. And then the 11th, of course, is the go-ahead home run. And, if not for that, I don't know if maybe we're still playing. Maybe Auburn doesn't get to go to the basketball game that night because the game goes 22 innings or something just silly. That game had reached such levels of silliness.
4 hours, right?
Plus 4 hours plus. Just a staggering, speech slurring kind of game. Completely off the rails. And you put it very diplomatically. I appreciate that Auburn looked like it had it won a couple of times. Yeah, really did. Hayden Murphy had a guy struck out twice.
And didn't get it.
Didn't get the call either time.
No.
I'll tell you who had the worst weekend of everybody in Lexington. Well, I won't. There's no need to mention names, but I didn't even think about this until today. Home plate Friday. Not great. Missed call on Bub Terrell Saturday in left. As egregious as it gets. Sunday, second base.
Oh, I didn't realize it was him for all 3 days.
The instigator of the whole thing Sunday was behind the plate Friday and at third base Saturday. You talk about folks, and objectively, I'm not saying anything bad about the person, the individual. Right. We're all humans. We all have bad days. We all have bad weekends. Okay. I had a bad year once. Like sometimes it's just bad. And my man on 3 straight days struggled. So
yeah, that's Sunday afternoon. For those of you who missed it, we talked about it on social media. Brad was on the radio call with this. Long story short, we found out later, both dugouts got warned about dugout antics. Do with that what you will. They're kids. It's a game, whatever.
Yeah.
And so Auburn, the game got stopped in the 5th by the second base umpire who threw out a player and a manager for doing a row the boat motion that Kentucky was doing all weekend.
Whole weekend. All right.
And at the same time that Auburn's kids are getting thrown out, there's a Kentucky player walked out of the dugout onto the field and is dancing.
Yeah. Now he's not like in between the lines. He's just right outside the dugout.
Yeah.
He's literally doing the running man.
And it's like if we're talking about no dugout antics, did he not get thrown out because he was out of the dugout? Could our guys just have walked to the field and done it and been okay?
Here's what I think he would tell you, the umpire would tell you. Kentucky had been doing that motion the whole weekend. Mm-hmm. Literally folks, the whole weekend, okay? Among many other things, they're an active and animated bunch. That's what they do, all right? Yeah. They were the best team in the league last year. Stuff works sometimes, okay? It's just what they do.
Yeah.
So Auburn did it Sunday, just trying to get something stirred up. And the umpire, I think, thought that because Kentucky had been doing it all weekend, that Auburn was doing it to taunt. Now we're down in the game 5-0. Who are you taunting with that motion? You're trying to fire your guys up.
You're down 5-0, and you just got your first hit of the game.
Yeah.
It's not like you're winning when you do this.
All the guy did was, stomp right into an anthill. Mm-hmm. Because it got the Auburn dugout, which was, 50% or so engaged. Yeah. 100% engaged for the moment. Now, Kentucky, to its credit, didn't allow Auburn to score in that inning. They got a couple of runners on. I thought if Auburn could have scored that inning, it would have been a completely different ball game because they were wide awake at that point. But yeah, so we get ready to go. After the whole conversation, calls Butch out there to talk to him like he's, anyway. And then we go back, get ready for the pitch. Auburn keeps doing it. He stops play again, throws Ryan Hetzler out of the ball game. Okay, Ryan leaves. We get ready to go back to play. Auburn goes back and does it again. Stops play again. This thing took 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Completely unnecessary. Just totally, completely unnecessary on a day where the first inning took 55 minutes and where rain was all around us.
It was raining in the ninth inning, like trying to get the game in before the rain finished.
Let's just
play the game.
Just play the game. Just play baseball. Just call the game. Call the game.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. But I guess kind of the big takeaway, like that game, we're just kind of writing that off. That happens from time to time. You just kind of get beat. You had a bad first inning. Christian Chatterton picks up 1 out in there. But Cole Fisher on Saturday, we kind of glossed over this.
Yeah.
He gives you 4 innings. And we talked on this show just last week about what does progress look like? Does he get into the third? Does he pick up an out in the third? He gives you 4 innings. Same situation. You're in a position to win the game when he leaves. You're not out of it yet. How unexpected was that for you? Because I did not see it coming, especially when it looked like he was a little iffy early. Yeah. And you saw, I think it was Andreas Alvarez jog out to the pin in the first inning. I was really nervous that you were going to get 1 2/3, maybe 2 innings out of him, and he goes 4.
Yeah, I wouldn't say totally surprised. I know that when I talked to Coach Thompson before the game, he said, ideally you get 4.
Yeah,
that's more than what the next progression would have been because he had gone an inning and a third, then 2 innings,
and then 2 and then 2 1/3,
2 1/3.
Yeah.
So like if he had gone 3, that would have been progress. And then went out and got you 4. Kentucky's going to get some hits. They got some hits against him. That's going to happen. Again, it's the way that team's engineered, especially in that ballpark. They were built to play a certain way in that ballpark. So I think they'll probably struggle on the road a majority of the year like they did at Georgia the first weekend. But at home, they play much better.
Yeah.
It was awesome to see. And I think that the return of Ike Irish is probably headline number 1.
Mm-hmm.
But Fisher's 4 innings, I think, are probably the second biggest individual headline from the weekend. I think you're talking about 2 team wins that continue to live in this identity that you never quit, you never give anything away, it's never too late. There's no scenario where your back is so far up against the wall that you can't come back. But individual storylines, Irish back in a huge way, and Cade Fisher. You start to settle into now a routine with Dutton and Fisher on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't put as much pressure on Chatterton in that Sunday spot to have to go 5 innings
right
on an SEC weekend. He can have a little bit of rope to figure some stuff out if he needs to.
Yeah, because like we mentioned Sunday, he goes. I want to say it was what he got 1 out, maybe 2
third
outs.
of an inning. Yeah.
Third of an inning there.
Just couldn't land the changeup. Couldn't land the changeup for a strike. It was not close, and they weren't swinging at it.
No. So, zone was a little tight. It felt like all weekend, really, not just on Sunday. So that's part of it too. But
tighter than my pants after Thanksgiving.
But the developments here of the pitching staff, you feel good about that. And then the other thing that kind of stands out is how you've been able to grab some of these midweek guys and move them to the weekend. We saw Alvarez. He pitches 3 innings over the weekend. 4 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. But same thing, 1 extra base hit. You're in the game when he leaves. It's a lot of singles and stuff like that. And to your point, some of those are Kentucky ballpark singles. They're not actual singles. And it feels like you've got the pitching staff where good enough to compete any weekend.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to have a question about, do you have enough offense? And that's not a place I thought I would be going into this season, or even just a couple weeks ago, when it looked like everything was kind of being carried by this offense. Getting Ike Irish back was huge.
Yeah.
But to your point, even with Ike batting 500 over the weekend, you hit 224. It's consecutive small, slow, cold weekends for Cooper McMurray, for Derek Fabian, Eric Snow, 2 hits, really big hits. He did draw, I think, 2 or 3 walks, 2 walks and hit by base, like hit by pitch. So we got on a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to be at the point where, is it possible that the strength of this team isn't necessarily the offense being a juggernaut or the lockdown pitching, and it's just that identity you talked about of they're going to be in every game and they're going to fight. But they may not be the most dominating unit on either side of the ball.
I think that's possible. And, you've got 2 samples now. You have Vanderbilt and Kentucky. I'm looking at Georgia's pitching numbers to see what kind of numbers they have on the year. Team ERA of almost 5. That ballpark tends to be more of a hitter's ballpark, especially if the wind is blowing out. So let's see what Auburn does this weekend. What is not a good sign through 6 conference games? Ballou, McMurray, Fabian, Snow, all hitting under 200 in conference play. Can't have that. Can't do that. You need those guys 240 and above in the league. 240 and above in the league, at least. And, we'll see what Ike does going forward. Obviously, he had a huge weekend at the plate, 7 for 14. Chase Fralick and Lucas Steele are your next highest batting averages in league play, 333.
Yeah.
So, you're going to need more offensively if you want to extend. Auburn has had 8 winning weekends in a row going back to last year, 6 straight to start this season. If you're going to keep that up against Georgia, who's a top 3 team in the country, and against Alabama, who's had a terrific start to the year. Not their last 2 games, but before that, they had a good start to the year. And LSU. Those are your next 3 series. And LSU and Alabama, you get at home. You're going to need those 4 guys specifically. That's your leadoff hitter, your top RBI guy, your power hitting first baseman, and your power hitting center fielder. You're going to need those guys to hit better than 200 in league play.
Yeah, it's one of those, you're kind of getting to the point of your point. Like, this was I'm not going to call it a warm up. Every conference game matters. They were tough, but this was your runway into the heart of the schedule. Yep. And you're kind of getting to that last point of, you've got to get this going. Real quick, before we get out of here, something that I noticed, we talked about this against Vanderbilt, and they did this well against Vanderbilt, and they struggled in this department against Kentucky, is the running game. You saw 10 of 13 for Kentucky on stolen bases. We talked about Vanderbilt only attempted 1. They just did not test Chase Fralick. Cale Strickland on Sunday had a caught stealing. You had 2 pickoffs on the base paths. But other than that, Kentucky seemed to be okay at stealing when they wanted to steal.
Yeah.
Would getting Ike Irish behind the plate maybe help with that? Or is this something where he's doing what he can, but you're going to be riding Chase Fralick a lot behind the plate?
No, I think eventually they'll move Ike back into that role. Let's see. Ike this year, teams are 1 for 7 against him. I have Kentucky going 5 for 7.
I may have looked at that differently when I pulled up the Kentucky box sheet down there. It was stolen bases versus attempts at the bottom. You know what? I bet you it combined the catcher and the pitcher. I think that's why I have 10 of 13. Okay. Fralick and Dutton. Dutton wasn't 3 of 3, and Fralick wasn't 4 for 4. Sorry about that. Right. That's on me, folks.
Okay. So 5 for 7 against that Kentucky team.
It's a little better.
That's not bad. I mean, you're throwing them out 30% of the time.
Yeah.
They ain't been thrown out 30% of the time this year. They're going to run. I don't know that Auburn will play a team. Auburn has played the 2 runningest teams in the SEC these first 2 weeks.
Yeah. Now they'll play the teams that slug the most.
Right. Yeah.
In the next couple of games.
Now it's about landing those breaking balls and getting swing and a miss and using the changeup effectively. And those it's a completely different task now with these 3 coming up: Georgia, Alabama, LSU.
Yeah. Overall, good weekend for the Auburn Tigers. I wanted you to feel at home for Tuesday's game that is going to be in Montgomery, in the home of the Montgomery Biscuits. I wore my Montgomery Biscuits polo from when I did a week of their games a little while ago.
Nice.
That game will be on War Eagle Plus for everybody at I think is at 6 p.m. against South Alabama on Tuesday night. So that game is tonight. You guys enjoy that. And then on the road at Georgia this upcoming weekend, we'll have a show later in the week talking about breaking down that matchup. Any final thoughts on the weekend?
Yeah, let's see. Just a completely different mentality with this group. We continue to see, like, confidence comes from a set of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. There's undeniable proof. Well, now you can stack up half a dozen games this year that maybe a team in the past or a lesser team from anywhere would have kind of rolled over. And you probably got half a dozen examples now from this year's team that they will not do that. And that's my punctuation mark for this weekend. And then to look ahead, I know we'll talk about it later in the week, but we're going to have a special Tiger Talk for basketball in Atlanta Thursday night. Would love for a bunch of people who are heading to Atlanta to support men's basketball to come over to that Saturday game in Athens. You can get tickets if you have to go through the Georgia website to do it. Do that. Let's have some witnesses for this baseball team. They're working very hard. They're never quitting. They're playing a lot of gutsy ball, and it's a very tough opponent. And I think the Saturday game is 3:00. So make your plans now early in the week. If you're coming over for basketball, let's be a part of a baseball game on the road and witness this team in action that way too Saturday.
Love the testimony from Brad Law.
There you go.
For Sonny DeShera, who's in spring training games for Brad Law, I'm Lindsey Crosby, and this has been the Barn Baseball Show.